Chunga Babe Messan Chinju, Handu Mayore, Chunga Babe, Chizameza, some of the mini, the Buru, the Musum, Jichi, Yunaya, Koeta Madi, Tenala, Sayamadi, Koyamadi, Mantis to Ledumadi, Leramani, and Chisaji and Yandisa, San and Hansi Dolo Yota May Park, singing to Jenja. That Bear Messan do today, pay today.
And certain families or people who has very, in fact, not so great responsibilities or great responsible, but just only to must take care of their own welfare of one or two person or three person, whatever. But still, they also cannot live always in peace. There's constantly some disagreement and disputes and causing suffering to each other. So that was a brief explanation of the human sufferings, samsaric sufferings, and however, in the samsara, the best rebirth that we can take, which is the most suitable for the practice of dharma, is the human rebirth. So if we get this human rebirth, and if we can make a real good, the correct use of it, right use of it, then of course it will lead us to the liberation, or complete liberation from the samsara, from all sufferings. And but this human rebirth is also does not take place very easily or sort of miraculously. It also has to go through a long process. So, for example, first of all, one must stay in the womb of the mother for 9 months. And so from the very beginning, from the time when the consciousness of the intermediate Bardo enters into the mixed or united cells of the cells of the parents in the womb of the mother, from then on, week by week, different energies, or lung or energies, develop in the body, and these different energies then helps to develop the body week by week, and our body, which is so fragile, just like a drop, then gradually becomes more and more solid, and then slowly all the formation of the limbs and so on will grow. But this process, this kind of growth, so when we grow from step to step like that, the child, that being, of course now we have forgotten them completely, but at that moment the being itself experiences also great suffering or sensations in its own body. And also when the mother, for example, takes food or drinks or something which is too hot, that also causes suffering sensation to the being. And the same thing with cold. And also if a mother eats too much, that also causes great uncomfortable sensation to the child. And also if the mother doesn't eat at all, or remain hungry, then again it causes a suffering to the child. As if the child, one feels a sensation as one is sort of just hanging in the air. And also, if the mother makes too strong movements, for example, from jumping or running or like that, that again causes suffering to the child. It feels the sensation as if like falling from a cliff or things like that, these kind of sensations. And during as long as the child remains in the womb, it is unable to breathe by itself. And it is fed by mother through the how do you say, through the how do you call it? Navel. Through the navel, through the cord. Yes. And if the child is going to be a male, then its head slightly towards facing right side, and it sits facing on backward, and if it's going to be a female one, it's slightly on the left and facing front. So anyway, in short, the feeling inside the womb of the mother, as long as one remains in the womb of the mother, it's like if we are put into a big bag full of things, full of dirt and so on, just put in there and tied, then it wouldn't be very comfortable sensation. So it's somewhat similar to that. So it's not only just for a day or two or some hours, it is for some months, and during which one is complete, one can't move, cannot, has no space, one is completely pressed and closed in. Little before the actual delivery of the child, then its body turns upside down. And then by the force of a certain energy, then when the child is pushed out, then again when it comes out from the mother, then also that time also is not comfortable, is not a pleasant sensation. One experiences a great, very violent suffering if one's body is completely pressed together between a rock or something like that. And then when it sees for the first time the light and everything around, it all at first it becomes, till one gets used to it, it all becomes a very sort of a little frightening experience, and also even how smooth the wrapping, the cloth, whatever, how smooth they are, or how smooth the material they are. But for the child, it's still it's just like if it's on a thorn or something like that. Its body so delicate and not used to this material, feels a great sensation of a very unpleasant sensation, and something very coarse. Everything, even even the most smoothest silk or whatever, is very coarse and rough for the delicate body of the child. So that is, and then all yes, I've forgotten, all what it could do was just to cry and shout for some time. So that is how the human body actually begins. Human life really begins. So human rebirth is, as it's supposed to be a very great and very fortunate and very high, but it also has this kind of disadvantage. So not only the child itself experiences suffering, but it also causes great suffering to the mother from the first day of the conception. The mother experiences various different sensations, sometimes sensation of heat, sometimes sensation of nausea, or anything like this. Unpleasant sensations may occur, and also, needless to say, at the time of the labor. And so that is the suffering of the birth, and after that follows the suffering of old age. So usually we are not aware of this suffering. So the suffering of old age is a very heavy suffering. A child, a youth, about 10, 12 years at that time, body is very light, it's full of energy, very light, can run, jump, it doesn't cause any effort, can shout, can laugh, whatever, everything is kind of fun. And gradually this changes, and then the body becomes more and more stiff, and the movements of the limbs and so on become more and more effortsome. And then more and more wrinkles and things start to appear on the body, and then gradually all the senses also become less and less sort of functionable, and then one also loses the control over the body, such as for example, more and more the water or saliva things, also water from the nose, for example, run and sort of without much control, and then also all the joints, everything become more and more stiff, and the hairs also grow whiter, and so on. All the body goes through a great change. So, for example, if somebody is if somebody is very youthful, 15 or 16 years old, and with all its perfection qualities. And the next morning, when the one wakes up, if one has become an old person of 60, 70 years old, with all its characteristics, with all the wrinkles, with all the hairs everywhere growing, and also with all the stiff joints and limbs, and unable to move, also to stand up, also, one has to put all four legs to stand up on four legs, and on four limbs, and so on. If with all these characteristics, if one has changed immediately, suddenly from the next day to such a form, it would be heartbreaking. It would be so unbearable to stand if it happens, if the change happens suddenly. If a thing would maybe run away. Whether that child accepts or not, but sooner or later, if the child lives long, would someday would be is subject to become like that. There's no other way. So the suffering of old age is more it's bearable for us because it comes very gradually, sort of unnoticeably, gradually the change comes. So therefore we are accustomed to it and get used to it. So it is bearable. If the change comes all of a sudden, it would be unbearable. And also another great suffering with in old age is then one remembers all the all kinds of distractions and all kinds of pleasures or distractions, and the pleasures and distractions what one has experienced or enjoyed at the time of the youth. So they are still there in the mind as a memory, but one is unable to do the same things because of the degeneration of the physical body, and that causes a great mental depression or suffering. And so one is unable to see things clear and hear, and all these senses also become very weak. That also causes lots of complications. And then in addition to that, if often the old people then are very much neglected, or they are very or abused, or sort of put aside in a family, even by one's own children or grandchildren, and it is quite seldom, especially nowadays, who looks after their to look after the old parents. It's very seldom. So then this kind of situation or treatment from other people causes also great suffering in their mind. And then there is the suffering of the mind becomes also very weak and unclear and very forgetful. It cannot remember things which one must remember, and that causes a great problem. And then a great worry or suffering is that one is facing nearer and nearer to the end of the life, to the death. So so this also brings a great sadness, because then one realizes that one will be separated completely forever from one's belongings, from one's family and friends and so on. So that produces a great suffering. And so that was the suffering of the old age, and then there is the suffering, as it is very evident and very clear to all of us. There's a suffering of illness, suffering of illness, which is also very very undesirable, because when someone is sick, even it's a not very heavy sickness, once immediately it causes some trouble, and one cannot eat anymore what one wants, or one has to follow certain diet or certain particular behavior. And then if the illness is very serious, then one even has to undergo very heavy treatment, operation and cutting one's body and cutting some organs and so on. All these things are very unpleasant, and very unpleasant, and a great source of worriness. And then the greatest suffering in human life as a human being is the suffering of the death. So this, as Rinpoche has explained before, when one dies, then one experiences a great suffering, physically great suffering, as well as mentally. So once we are born as a human being, one has to undergo, one is obliged to undergo all these sufferings. There is no other way. Now, beside these sufferings, then we, as a human being, we have certain so-called happinesses we enjoy. There is the happiness, the comfort, pleasure, happiness even of eating delicious food, or even sitting on a very comfortable cushion, or living in a very pleasant house or pleasant room. All there are this type of happinesses. So this type of happiness that we so-called happiness that we enjoy and that we seek and we enjoy in our life, in reality, in depth, they are not real, valid happiness, but they are happiness which is subject to change, happiness which is subject to degeneration. For example, if when somebody has to stand or do something standing up, like in a factory, or for hours and hours, then gradually it becomes then one's knee aches, and it causes suffering, and it causes great suffering, and one really seeks one really looks forward to get a chance to sit down. And when one takes a little break and sits down, then it's very comfortable. It's very, very pleasant, very relaxing, and it's really a pleasure. It's a real happiness. But in so such kind of happiness or comfort we enjoy, we experience, well, like when we sit down after standing up for a long time, we think it is truly happiness, but in reality it's not real. It's not true happiness. Rather, it is another type of suffering. The reason why it appears as a happiness is because the suffering, the suffering just before is so obvious and is so great. So when one gets sort of a relief from that, then it appears as kind of pleasure. If that comfort, if it's a real happiness, then if we let that person sit there, really sit, now you continue, you go on to sit, then maybe after longest maybe an hour or two, then it becomes quite unbearable. And if we force that person to sit there for one day, that will be a real hell, and it would be just worse than being imprisoned. Then its legs start to ache and back start to ache and everything. It would be a terrible feeling. And that person would surely beg for to let him to get up, to stand up. And if we let him to get up, and then again after some time he will want to sit down. So like this, it always needs a change. Otherwise, this suffering will become too obvious. So, for example, if someone is very thirsty, and then if he finds a glass of juice or some drink, at first it's very pleasant. It's truly a great pleasure. And will enjoy this drink very much. It's a real great pleasure. And the reason why it appears like that is the suffering of the thirst was so great. So when he gets something to subdue that, then it appears the reaction is something like a happiness. If it's a true happiness, then the more he drinks, then the happiness should increase. But in reality, after maybe 2 or 3 cups, then he will start to throw up. So all types of samsaric happiness are like that. Either it's a food or drink or clothes or heat or cold or any other sensations. All these kind of pleasant sensations we experience, they are very temporary. They are all subject to change and degeneration. If one enjoys them too much, they become all cause of great suffering. So, so as long as we are in the samsara, there's no real moment of freedom and no true happiness that we can experience. And moreover, in the samsara, the life that we take, the rebirth that we take, are so countless that if even that in the past, in the past we have taken so countless lives where we had so many times, for example, engaged in fight with some other people, and where our body or our heads or limbs were cut so many times. If they are somewhere kept, all the limbs and the heads and so on, if they are kept somewhere in a big heap, it would be like more than a great mountain. And in the same way, as long as we will be in the samsara, we will go on to do the same. In the same way that in the samsara, we have taken so many rebirths, which have been fed by the milk of the mother, and if all those milk were stored somewhere, collected somewhere, it would be much more than all the ocean, which would fill the whole space, because we have done it so many times. And the bodies that we have taken so far in the past would be countless. So, and so we have experienced all types of sufferings in the past, in the countless lives that we have taken, and in the same way, until we gain liberation or we are free from the samsara, we will go on to experience more sufferings of the samsara. So like that, we should meditate on the sufferings of the true nature of the samsara, and also we should pray to the Guru to give the blessing, to generate in us, in our mind, a very pure renunciation towards the samsara. And this way, then after some time, then a very deep renunciation or a deep aversion to the samsara, or to the sufferings of the samsara will generate in us, and which is spontaneous, sort of automatically will arise in our mind, and then the true aspiration for liberation or for nirvana will generate in our mind. So, so with this renunciation or aspiration towards liberation as the basis, then if we then we should put into practice the shila, that is the discipline, and then samadhi, the meditation, concentration, and then wisdom, prajna, which is to wisdom to realize the emptiness. So with by the combination of these three trainings or three practices, then the liberation can be attained. So the Shila is very important. It's a very important basis for every practice of Dharma. That is the correct ethics of body, speech, and mind. That is very important, even to attain fortunate status of rebirth. So it's very important. And then, in addition to that, then we should practice concentration, meditation, samadhi, and develop the wisdom which realizes shunyata. But that will be explained in the great vehicle, in the third person, the person with a great scope, since our goal is not just the liberation from the samsara, rather it is to attain full enlightenment state of Buddhahood. So those two trainings will be explained in combination with a great vehicle. So the training of the mind is very important. It's not just enough to know about these different points, just to have some understanding or so just a mere intellectual understanding of these is not enough. One must train one's mind, integrate one's mind with these. So that can be done through the practice of meditation only. So meditation means then there are two types of meditation: jogum and jogum, which means analytical meditation and concentrated meditation. So meditation does not mean at all just to sit quiet and then think nothing at all and just keep mind completely blank. That is not at all meditation. So some people call this the meditation which sort of stops all thought, the stopping of the thought or a conception. But it is not possible to stop thought actually, and such kind of practice is a true cause to take rebirth as an animal, where one becomes really stupid. Even in Tibet also, in the past, certain Chinese master came and propagate such a kind of meditation where the stopping of the thoughts is very much emphasized. But this is in fact completely wrong, and it was such method was then completely disproved by the great Indian master Kamalashila, who was invited to Tibet, and he has cleared away all the misunderstandings and misconceptions about meditation. And but when that Chinese Huasheng or Chinese monk, this meditator, when he went back to China, one sandal or one of his shoes left behind in Tibet. So that was a little bit unauspicious sign that there is something has left behind, and some master said that that is a little bit unauspicious sign with me may mean that this kind of wrong view about meditation may return to Tibet again in the future. So when you practice Dharma, it is very important to first to learn it correctly and to try to practice as correct as possible. Because if one makes a mistake in the practice of Dharma, then everything goes wrong. Then one does not accomplish any result or accomplish the wrong result. Then it would be a great waste of time and energy. So practice, the sign of true practice of Dharma or progress in the practice of Dharma can be observed by the external the behaviors. If the behavior of body, speech, mental or behavior is if it's really getting better and better, if it's improving, become purer and purer, and become more and more virtuous, that means then meditation, whatever practice the person doing, is really going well and is making progress. Although how much one meditates, how long one has been in meditation, if the behavior remains the same or is getting worse, then there's something going wrong. So when one meditates on the sufferings of the samsara, like the sufferings of disease or old age and so on, one should not just do it, analyze it on somebody else, on some other old people or sick people. Not that's not the way. One must take it upon oneself. One must go through oneself in that experience, with that experience. Imagine it as if we are going ourselves are going through that experience, like being suffering from illness, with a very serious illness, and causing great suffering, and causing great suffering physically and mentally, and not being even able to be helped by any medicine and so on. Try to imagine the suffering of illness as clear as possible upon oneself, and so put oneself in the situation. And in the same way, about death, instead of meditating on somebody else dying, one should meditate oneself experiencing the suffering of the death, because it is certain that one will go through that stage. So by taking it in advance and taking the experience now in the meditation, oneself dying and going through all the process of the dissolution and so on.
sosa dijo majena, gong kuru toba chigu mare, remu trija shoma trija noga se togu mare, shoma rangi gore. Daga naje gong de la be kunjo ki chelo jolan juni majuna, ane jole pen togu mare.
So one must every time one practice meditation on certain point of dharma, one must pray to the guru and ask for the blessing of the guru to help you to get the correct realization. That's very important, because this way one accumulates merit and purifies the obstacle for the realization. So without that, just only making effort in meditation and analytical or concentrated just only practicing the technique alone, it alone cannot give us the result or fruit effectively. So it's like so the blessing of the guru is very important to and the accumulation of merit and purification of obstacle, that's very important. And then if one meditates, apply the right method and technique, then one will be very successful. So without which it's quite impossible. It's like to illuminate in a room, one need a real light, a flame or real light. A drawing of a light or a drawing of a lamp cannot illuminate anything. And there are people who goes around and teaching certain very easy method, sort of a direct method or easy method, that if one start meditating in the evening, then next morning one can sort of attain enlightenment, or if start in the morning, in the evening you are already a Buddha. There are such teachings. Lord. But actually, if one practices such a technique, such a meditation, even one meditates with such a method for whole life, let alone attainment of enlightenment, even one's behavior will not change a slightest bit. And in the same way, like this Chinese master's method, where one try to stop, one stops all thought and remain sort of remain silent or remain blank. This may be very it can be very peaceful, or can be comfortable or pleasant, because one doesn't need to think anything. Then in fact it is not possible, because in this during the session of meditation, although one tries to think nothing, but then since that person has to live, at least he has to live, he has to eat, otherwise one will starve to death. And so as soon as when one has to do something for one's living, thought has to come, and so on. So therefore there's no way for a person to become like a rock. And when you make the search of Dharma, when you search for something to practice Dharma, one must do it very carefully and analyze very carefully in order to not fall into the pits. Of course, if one takes the wrong way or the wrong, then it would be, then we spend lots of time and energy on that. After one realizes it doesn't bring much result, then one has to turn back again. The left, if we go and if we follow and go to the left, and then if somebody else wants to come in front, then you go in front or back. And this way one does not accomplish anything. In ordinary activities, in business or anything, even if we make a mistake, one may suffer some certain consequence of that. But it is still it is something which in few years, longest few years, then we can again redo it and can fix the mistake, and one can still be very successful and get a very good result at the end. But in the practice of Dharma, in the spiritual search or in the spiritual practice, if one makes a mistake or takes a wrong way, then we waste a great opportunity, and then we fall into a wrong direction now and in the for the future. Of course, no one can force anybody to follow his own way or his own method or his own technique. The practice of Dharma is something which has to come naturally, out of free will. So there are people who claims themselves a practitioner of Dharma, but in fact they are doing it just for wrong purpose or for a small purpose, or to write just in order to be able to write some books about it or to translate something or this and that. Then the purpose, it is the real purpose of practice of Dharma or the taking the teaching of Dharma is not complete. It is not it's not correct motivation. So Kyabje Rinpoche says that he would of course give the teaching to anyone, Buddhist or non-Buddhist and so on. So it is up to the Dharma is something which can be given to all, but it is up to the individual oneself whether one accepts Dharma or put it into practice. So it is very important to be very careful when one learns Dharma, otherwise it can become dangerous. So Rinpoche says that somebody came, a Swiss person, somebody from Switzerland came, a tall person came to he came to Rinpoche. So this fellow had gone to India first, received some technique or meditation, whatever it was, and then did that practice for a long time. And and then that person, he became very sick, and lots of trouble started, and then finally he came to Rinpoche. Rinpoche met him. And then the fellow said that he has practiced some meditation, he has practiced very much meditation, but now he is suffering so much from this and that trouble, is almost like dying, but I cannot really die, so I am in a very difficult situation. What should he do? So the Rinpoche asked, then what kind of meditation did you practice? What did you really practice? Then he said, I practiced this, it's all finished. I practiced that, it's also complete. Now I'm here, but here then the trouble started, and now I can't digest any food. I have some trouble, I have heat, I have this and that, and now in a very great trouble. So please fix me correctly. Then Rinpoche thought maybe something with his meditation or something like that. Then he asked whether he was Buddhist or not, because he thought if he is a Buddhist, then maybe he should take some refuge, maybe that would help him. Then he said he received his method from some yogi Indian, some sadhu. Then this, he told Rinpoche that the sadhu, he is the master, the yogi told him to first meditate on here, then here, and he has done it. It's all completed, and now I have reached here, and now I have faced this problem. And then it is very difficult for Rinpoche to do something for him, because it's completely something different what he was doing. It's very difficult for Rinpoche to fix this. And so he told, now the best thing would be to go back to his own master, who has given him this technique, and maybe he could mend something. When Rinpoche was in Italy, then again somebody came to see him. So that person who looks all right from outside and a little bit fat, and then he that fellow told Rinpoche that he has been practicing meditation for a long time, doing very intensive practice of meditation, and now or somebody always comes to him and fights with him, and wrestles with him. He has to spend all his time wrestling with that fellow, whoever it was, with that being. So he told Rinpoche that now I know I sense whenever this is coming, and I prepare myself very well. But then we wrestle for a very long time, but each time I get defeated. And even that very day when he saw Rinpoche, he said that he just been up, he was sitting a little higher on a little hill and suffering very much.